Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video today. And today, the Denver Broncos beat the Arizona Cardinals 38-12 in the preseason in the final preseason game. Not the final preseason, not the final game of the preseason. That was the Patriots and the Commanders. But for both these teams, was their final preseason game. 38-12 is the final score. The Denver Broncos had a great game. Zach Wilson looked great. We're going to get into Zach Wilson in just a second. But the Denver Broncos finished the preseason 3-0, so won all their games, while the Cardinals did not win a single game in the preseason and being 0-3. Look, we have seen teams go 0-3 and in the preseason, or 0-4 in the preseason, and be very successful in the regular season and go to the playoffs. And we've seen teams go 3-0 in the preseason or 4-0 in the preseason and absolutely suck in the regular season. So preseason records don't mean anything. Now let's get to this game. So 38-12 is the final score. And before I get into what the stats, the scoring summary, let's see what these two teams have in store. In week one when both teams start their season. Because for every game I have every final preseason game I've talked about this week in these final week 3 preseason games, I've always previewed the week 1 matchup, as we will see when we will see these two teams next. So starting off with the Denver Broncos, they will be traveling to Seattle, where we will see historically one of the worst trades in NFL history. We will see those two teams match up, but the thing is, there's no Russell Wilson in Denver anymore. So this would have been Russell Wilson's return to Seattle, but instead it is Bo Nix's NFL debut. And I'm excited to see Bo Nix. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for the Broncos, even though I think they have a good defense. I think it's definitely a tough game. Even though I really like Bo Nix, I think he's going to be a great quarterback. I'm really excited to see what he can do. It definitely is a tough matchup to go on the road in your first NFL game and face a good secondary like the Seattle Seahawks, and a solid defense overall. So, it's going to be interesting as well, because for the Seahawks, they have a head coach making their, making their head coaching debut in Mike McDonald. So that will be really interesting. And I really like the Seahawks offensively. I don't know about defensively. I think that's the bigger question mark. But offensively, even though Geno's a little bit of a question mark at quarterback, really like the wide receiver trio of Lockett and DK and Jackson Smith-Jigba, and really like Kenneth Walker. I think he might have a breakout year this year. And they have a solid tight end, Noah Fant, as well. So it's a solid offense. And Denver has a defense to match up against them. Now let's go to the Arizona Cardinals. They have another, tough road game, just like the Denver Broncos. They will be facing the Buffalo Bills. Even though the Bills have lost, somewhat this offseason, losing Davis and Diggs, it will be very interesting to see the Cardinals go into Buffalo, a hard place to play. It definitely is harder to play there in the winter, but still, good crowd, good quarterback. So that will be an interesting one. Even though they got Kyler Murray, I think it's a little bit of a harder road matchup for the Cardinals than it might be for the Broncos. So, honestly, if I had to predict week 1, as of right now, 11 days before these two teams play their first game, I think both teams, get handed week 1 losses. But that doesn't mean, either one of them seasons are lost because of a week 1 loss. I don't think either one of these teams make the playoffs. I think the Cardinals could if Kyler Murray stays healthy and has a good year. This defense looks better for them, but I still think both teams have bounce back years. I like what the Broncos have with Bo Nix at quarterback, and what Arizona has with Kyler Murray, and improving their roster a little bit this offseason. So I think both teams will have bounce back years than last season. I just don't see them getting week 1 wins. All right, scoring summary. Let's get into the scoring summary. First quarter, the Broncos got on the board first. 3-yard touchdown from Audric Esteman. It's 7-0. Then Zach Wilson throws a 1-yard touchdown pass to Nate Adkins. It's 14-0. Then going into halftime, Matt Prater makes a 50-yarder. It's 14-3. But then It's a field goal game. Will Lutz with a 30-yarder. It's 17-3. And Matt Prater again, 24-yard field goal. It's 17-6. And then Zach Wilson with a 1-yard touchdown run. That was his second touchdown, 24-6. And then we saw Hassan Hall with a 3-yard touchdown run. They went for 2 to make it a 10-point game. They failed, 12-24. Then Zach Wilson throws a touchdown bomb to Brandon Johnson. It's 31-12 with the extra point for Will Lutz. And then a 94-yard interception return for Lavelle Bailey to make it 38-12. Game leaders, former Houston quarterback, Houston Cougar quarterback, Clayton Tune, 12 for 18 with 119 pass yards with 1 interception. While for the Broncos, Zach Wilson, 16 for 25, 251 pass yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. I don't know. Look, Bo Nix is obviously the starter. That is, you cannot make an argument for there. You can't say, Zach Wilson should be the starter in Denver. If anybody wants to make that argument, I don't even want to try to argue with you. But I think you could make a little bit of an argument that maybe Denver could potentially think about, instead of making Zach Wilson the third quarterback on this roster, where he's the emergency quarterback, the third active quarterback on the roster. I like Jarrett Stidham, but maybe you think about making him the backup quarterback to Bo Nix. I think maybe Denver would probably want more of an experienced, successful quarterback like Jarrett Stidham, to, be the backup to a rookie in Bo Nix. I don't know if I'd say more experienced, just because of the fact that Wilson has started more in his career, if you compare their careers. But I think where the experience comes from is he's been in the league for a while. He's been in the league since like 2018 or 2019. Well, Zach Wilson has only been in the league since 2021. And has had some bad years. So even though Wilson has gotten the chance to start more, Stidham has been in this league longer. So maybe you want a guy that's been in the league longer to be the backup for a rookie. I don't know. But Wilson, I thought, played good throughout the whole preseason to the point where they could potentially think about giving him the chance to be the backup quarterback. But I want you guys to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Who would you rather see be the backup quarterback for the Denver Broncos, Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson? But he looked good in this game. All right, rushing yards. Hassan Hall looked great for the Arizona Cardinals. 19 carries for 59 rushing yards with 1 touchdown, while Watson for Denver, 11 carries, 38 rushing yards. Receiving yards, the former Colorado wide receiver Xavier Weaver looked great for Arizona. 2 receptions with 56 receiving yards, while for the Denver Broncos, it was Brandon Johnson who had 2 receptions for 83 receiving yards with 1 touchdown. He had that 46-yard reception for the touchdown, which was great. Great throw by Zach. But he also had another big reception, which was for 37 yards. For 37 yards. So 2 big receptions for Brandon Johnson in this game. All right, let's get into some other stats. Speaking of Jarrett Stidham, as I talked about him, look, he wasn't bad in the preseason, but he was all right. And he didn't get a lot of playing time in the preseason. If you look at Zach Wilson, who got a bunch of playing time, who knows what we would have seen from Jarrett Stidham if he got this amount of playing time. But 2 for 4, 28 passing yards. But just the reason that we saw Zach for so long and Jarrett Stidham for so little makes me believe that they're most likely thinking about making Jarrett Stidham the backup quarterback. If they felt like there was more of a competition, then I think we would have saw Jarrett Stidham play more in this game. But we'll see what happens. Maybe Wilson came in and played so good at the point where they will potentially think about giving him the chance to be the backup. Desmond Ridder for the Cardinals, another not first round pick, but another quarterback draft pick who was traded this offseason, threw 10 for 16 with 111 passing yards, and he ran for 25 rushing yards. Speaking of quarterback rushing yards, Zach Wilson, I mentioned he had a rushing touchdown for 1 yard, but he also had 22 rushing yards in this game. So that means he had a 21-yard rush attempt. So, Zach Wilson on one play was able to show off his running ability there. Rushing yards outside of Blake Watson with 38 rushing yards. Tyler Batty had 10 carries for 32 rushing yards. And draft pick Troy Franklin had a 9-yard rush attempt as well. Then receiving yards outside of Brandon Johnson, former New York Giant David Sills the fifth had 2 receptions for 38 receiving yards. Rookie Troy Franklin had 1 reception for 21 receiving yards. And that was really it for the Cardinals outside of Weaver. Blake Whiteheart had 4 receptions for 35 receiving yards, and that was really it. All right, fumble. Zach Wilson did fumble in this game, but he recovered his own fumble. And there was a fumble lost by the Cardinals by Tony Jones Jr. It was recovered by Kadron Smith on the defensive end. All right, defensive stats for the Broncos. Tanner McAllister led the Broncos in tackles with 7 tackles, while Darren Hall led the Cardinals in tackles with 8 tackles. The Cardinals had a total of 4 sacks, with a half a sack for both Bobby Price and Tyreek Maddox-Williams, 1 sack for Jesse Luketa, 1 sack for Cameron Thomas, and 1 sack for Phil Hoskins. All right, for the Broncos, they had 3 sacks with 9 tackles for loss, 1 sack for Justin Stranad, and 2 sacks for Jordan Jackson, who showed some good things in this game. All right, interceptions. I mentioned that interception for Lavelle Bailey, who had the 94-yard pick 6. That was the only interception in this game. Broncos get to win 38-12. Zach Wilson looks really good. The Cardinals didn't look too good in this game, but both of their young quarterbacks, Clayton Tune and Desmond Ridder, looked pretty solid. That's an interesting QB2 battle. We'll talk about Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham. It's another QB2 battle right there between Desmond Ridder and Clayton Tune. So let me know your thoughts on the Broncos winning 38-12 in the comment section, and peace out.